like to say thank you, Gavin, for pretty much questioning every single amendment we proposed. I suppose it's the point at which to say it would be nicer if a few more people had questioned a lot of what we had to say, but I'm deciding to take from that a lot of people just agree with all of our ideas, and therefore they have no objections. I'd hope so. So then we have a phase after that. This slide is getting really long and boring. There's a phase after that where we then, after the member consultation, we go back to internal board discussions. You know, because if all the membership have hated our ideas, there's no point pressing ahead and just putting it to a vote. So there's an option in there for the board to tweak things. And I suppose there might be a bit of a cyclical process in here. We might not go straight to member votes. But then ultimately, once we're happy, or as happy as we can be with our proposed amendments, they get put to member vote. And that's the point at which the members have the final say, yes or no, to our amendments. So it's important to note that even though the board has a very strong responsibility for the constitutional amendment process, it's ultimately the members that decide yes or no to our actual suggestions. So, there are some proposals currently out there. I want to say some, I don't know, it's about 69, possibly 70. And so I didn't want to put them all on one side. And I haven't put them all on consecutive slides, so we're not going to go through all of them here. We wanted to deal with this phrase, other governance responsibilities. But also, to some extent, we wanted to formalise the division in responsibilities between the board and the NEC. Because the rest of the Constitution doesn't even refer to the board. The board is only in there in 8 for those 3 clauses mentioned earlier. And a lot of responsibilities which could be considered governance responsibilities are still held by the NEC because that was the only body that existed when the Constitution was initially drawn up. We also wanted to define some rules for things that happen. So we have had quite a few party elections, but there aren't really any rules enshrined in the Constitution to deal with this. It's just what sounds like a good idea, we'll go with that. And it turns out, I think, that those good ideas were good ideas, but we want to enshrine them into the Constitution. The positions of regional administrative officers as well, they exist, there are elections for them, but the Constitution doesn't know about them, so we wanted to formalise those as well. But also we're aware that the way the board works is, it's quite important for people to know and understand and have an expectation of the way the board will do things. So we didn't want to put too much of that into the Constitution, so quite a few bits of the Constitution referred to a code of practice, which is now on the wiki. And this code of practice is just trying to tell the membership how the board will deal with the duties that it has. Now, this code of practice can change. It's there just for you to know the way we want to work. If we just decide to change the way we're doing things, we'll update our code of practice. And I suppose we'll distribute these slides later, and there's some links on various slides to interesting things. But I'm not going to click the link. So the code of practice, without going into too much detail, it's our internal guidelines rather than rules that are enshrined. They cover things like how often we meet and when we have internal voting on the board, how we're dealing with that. It also formalises the amendment process. So the 7 steps I showed earlier, which is the process we went through this time, we thought, well, that's good enough, we'll add that to the code of practice. And also it covers a bit about the discipline and arbitration panels. So, I'd like to move on to a Q&A on our current proposals. I noticed that I didn't keep a handout for myself. Thank you very much. So, there are about, I think, 69 clauses, so I've said about 70, just to make it sound worse than it really is. And we didn't really want to ask you, the members, to vote on 70 different questions. But nor did we want to just say, here's our 70, yes or no. So we tried to go for a happy medium, and we've broken it down to about 36 questions. Each question covers several different clauses. And the handout shows all of the clauses as they're broken up into the 36 different questions. In case the format of the table isn't immediately understandable, the left-hand side is our current constitution. Anything in red we're proposing to amend or delete. The right-hand side shows what we hope the new constitution will say, and anything in green is a new addition or an amendment to an existing clause. So, I don't know if you want to take a few minutes to have a skim through and see if it says anything in there like, this party will officially execute, and then it's got your name in it. We're the kind of people that might have slotted that in for fun.
We should take any other questions at the same time.
Absolutely, yes. I don't know if you want so any questions related to the Constitution, well, the amendments proposed on the piece of paper, the Constitution in general, the board in general, or where the toilets are, in case no one's told you, please shoot. Yes?
On incompatible memberships, do you have an example of what sort of thing that would cover? Have you got any sort of groups which you know would definitely be considered incompatible if you round out members?
Okie dokie. And which question number is that?
4. But it covers like the good standing stuff as well later on.
Okie dokie. So the question is, in terms of incompatible membership, are there any memberships that we would consider to be incompatible with membership of the Pirate Party? I think the problem with this is this was an existing clause in the Constitution, and I don't think any of us really have a strong idea of absolutely yes, membership of this organisation should be completely incompatible with membership of the Pirate Party. Because if we knew for an absolute, we could possibly include those in the Constitution. But the problem with that would be then, over time, things would go out of date, other organisations might change, and also, how prescriptive do we want to be? Yes, John?
I just wanted to come in on that and say, at this moment under the current Constitution, there is no organisation that has been declared by the NEC as incompatible. What this amendment does, and it's one I support, is it transfers the control of that to the board, which is where I absolutely agree with the board, that's where it should be.
Did we get him? Okay. So, yes, I mean, the important part of this clause is it's the transferal of that responsibility from the NEC to the board. So, as I mentioned earlier, the clarifying of the lines. As to whether, well, clearly there are no other organisations that have been determined yet to be incompatible. I don't think we have any plans to suddenly declare that there are some. I suspect that there might be a point at which you could clearly say, yes, that person being a member of that other organisation is now, it's becoming an issue that they're a member of that organisation. But I don't think we know yet any situations that come up. But we're reserving the power and transferring it rather than just removing it.